we will keep the questions till the end of the section. Now, I'm very happy to pass the mic to our next speaker. We have said a couple of words about predatory journals, and now we will turn to Georgi Kurakin, whose texts are published on the websites of the Ethical Society, Academic Ethics Society. It is important to discuss predatory conferences because they very often mutate. It is an honor for me to say that Georgi Kurakin is part of the Royal Biological Society. He works at the Pirogov University. Works at the chair of biochemistry. Georgi, I'm passing the mic to you. Good morning once again, dear colleagues. I wanted to express my gratitude to Anna. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you very much for such a kind introduction too. A couple of words about me. I'm a technical volunteer at the Council on the Ethics of Academic Publications, and on the website of the Ethics Council that Natalia showed at the very beginning of our section, I published different materials. They are translations. Well, translations themselves are done by other volunteers. I normally do summaries, the gists of international recommendations. And it is true that one of the latest materials I worked with was on predatory conferences. Anna invited me to take part in this conference, so I decided to turn it into a talk because I have a lot of things to share here. So today I will say a couple of words about predatory conferences. It will build on Larissa's talk. I want to begin with a quote, a funny and a sad quote to PhD students, postdocs, and academics. Have the confidence in yourself that predatory journals have in you. It's a quote from Dr. Stephen Axon from his account on Twitter. And it is true that predatory journals, like predatory conferences, truly believe in authors. In inverted commas, of course. Legitimate conference and legitimate journals always select among the applications they get. Predatory conferences do not offer any control over the reports submitted. They are organized with the sole purpose of making money. If you have paid, you are most welcome to share your report. The very term predatory conferences has the same provenance as the predatory journals. It was introduced by Jeffrey Beall. He was the person who launched this discussion in the context of academic ethics. However, there is a difference. With predatory journals, at least, we have recommendations from the Committee of Ethics, from COPE. In Russia, this problem is much more widespread than in Europe or the US. Unfortunately, in Russia, it has grown almost to pathological level. With predatory conferences, the scale of the problem is the same, but there are no recommendations from experts, even internationally. This is why I decided to share this information today. Here are the stages we go through for taking part in conferences and for submitting writing publication. So first we submit the text, then we go through the review process. After that, if the quality criteria are fulfilled, if it fits the level of the conference, then the article is accepted. For the journal, it means a publication. For the conference, it means a speech, a talk. In the Russian environment, very often, we have conferences that don't offer any review process. No review is in place at all.
Где происходит доклад только по приглашению, то есть где выступают только приглашенные спикеры.
There are conferences too, where only invited speakers share their ideas, like today's conference. Anti-plagiarism 2022. Their organizers are responsible for selecting the speakers. Now we're talking about conferences that have the open call process.
Когда канал подачи открыт, а рецензирование отсутствует, это даже не хищническая, это мусорная конференция, но в России таких...
With no review process, conference becomes rubbish, not even predatory. And unfortunately, we have a lot of such conferences in Russia.
Ну, не в центральных, скорее всего, хотя и там возможно, но в провинциальных заведениях часто даже насаждаются.
That is especially true for provincial universities and colleges. I was on the committee on one of the conferences that took place in a faraway university. I was invited, but after a lot of negotiations with one of the authors, I had to decline his work. I was trying to push him to make corrections, but he did not want to communicate with me. So I had to convince him to remove the paper in this conference. So he cancelled his application. Then the chair of the committee contacted me and he demanded that we would mail out the information letters saying that the authors bear the sole responsibility for the quality of their papers. So this is the phrase that has the aim of explaining why we have no review process. I thought it was completely illegitimate. Unfortunately, it very often happens at the Russian conferences. No, authors do not bear the sole responsibility. The conference does too. There is one more important point. Sometimes collections of articles are published after virtual conferences, the conference that never happened in reality. So in reality, it is a fictitious conference. But in Russia, they are very often called remote. They are not literally remote, where authors communicate via internet like we do now. It is just a non-existent conference with a publication made in its wake. And all of these factors are enough to try to stay as far as possible from such conferences. However, sometimes predatory conferences are very good at pretending. They mutate, they promise review process, they promise a good platform for the conference, they promise communication with colleagues and even publications in reviewed journals. So today, I will talk about how one can carry out this analysis on one's own, how to understand whether a conference is legitimate or predatory. Today, we will talk about the cases where conferences pretend to be legitimate. I'm not the first person who raises this topic in the framework of our council. 1 year ago, Irina Bode organized an online meeting first
сделала доклад на конференции обнаружения соимствований.
First, internally at her department, then she shared this talk at the anti-plagiarism conference. I will share this presentation. The link is clickable, and it is also published on our council. I watched her talk again, and here are the formal criteria that she mentioned.
Итак, значит, заочный характер
The first one,
я подчеркну,
the conference being
это нормально.
non-existent virtually. I mean, not remote, but fictitious conferences.
А улыбка есть.
A smile without the cat, so to speak. A very fast review process. What do we mean here?
До 3 октября подается статьи.
Articles have to be submitted before the 3rd of October, and then on the 7th of October, they promise to publish the collection of works and to host the conference. It is evident that in this extremely short period of time, no one can review all of these articles. That means that there is no review process at all. And then another case is getting the reference data immediately after paying for publication. That means that the decision to publish is made after the fact of paying money.
Вот такая вот ложная репутация, ложные преимущества. К сожалению, забыл выделить голубым.
I forgot to highlight in blue the false positive features of the publication. This is related to the interdisciplinarity also. When a conference includes informatics, biology, literature, and many other areas of knowledge, this might mean something suspicious because most often experts cannot find enough professionals in all these areas to participate. So this is one of the red flags. Other recommendations based on the non-systematic analysis are the following. You can see them on the screen. Think, check, submit. There exists a similar checklist, think, check, attend. It is connected with the Saudi Arab Emirates, which is not very common in the European scene, but still. When the analysis is non-systematic, the ability to prove anything is lower.
А другой говорит нет, встречаются вот совершенно другое.
One says one thing, another says another. So I think the most productive way is to systematize the materials.
Внешне похожие на научную, но на самом деле являющиеся полной чепухой.
We can generate scientifically looking materials, articles, and papers, reviews, send them into suspicious institutions and check whether they accept the paper or not. There exist machine learning tools to generate texts that look like scientific papers. They generate articles in English, which can be translated in Russian, and we did that. Some of these translations were accepted approved for publication, and it caused a great scandal.
Случай все-таки был. В своем блоге на Хабре, то есть
another curious case is the following. We have a Harbor.com blog spot. There, Anatoly Bobe published a post. You can find the link on the slide. He was invited by email at a conference about pain. He understood it was a spam, but he decided to make a prank. He presented himself as a member of the Committee for Torture, presenting himself as an expert in pain. And he decided to check whether he will be accepted, and he was approved for the section of the neural interfaces. He continued the email correspondence. He presented his subject as new instrumental methods of fast confessions from heretics, witches, and other sinners. And he was readdressed to the section of motivation, depression, and conscience. And he received back the document attesting his future participation. And I present this case like as a curious case, but a very suspicious one. Another case is a case of Professor Diane Pirogov, professor of applied English linguistics in City University of Hong Kong. She published an article, Predatory Conferences, What Are the Signs, in Journal of Academic Ethics. She generated scientifically looking articles. I think that she did not use any digital tools, but she followed the method of Bode, and several conferences accepted her. She analyzed the criteria that she could present. We took her criteria and applied them to Russian reality, because the formulas are somewhat different. And I want to give you as an example one of the texts for the conference. You can see the text on the slide. The text looks like a scientific one, and it might have been written by a human even.
Ну, вполне возможно.
Well, it might be even true.
Экспериментов предлагается вообще фантастика и бред. В первом
if you might have noticed that as control experiments are described, they looked like nonsense. For example, the foundation was loaded by a gorilla. So you can see the methods described
тем самым создавала
article.
Над ней запускали низколетящие самолеты,
to make gorilla move
вывести из
and to run over the roof and the foundation. They put a running plane above, and I made the illustration myself. Another control experiment describes the following situation. It used a fairy tale, and I guess you recognized the one. So Diana Pirogov summed up several criteria, common criteria for predatory conferences, and you can see that multidisciplinarity is there. Originally, they were named a little bit bit different, but I translated it to sound Russian flag.
Красный флаг. Но самое главное,
The red flags are multidisciplinarity.
Замаскированную мультидисциплинарность.
And Diana mentioned that there is a type of hidden multidisciplinarity.
Вот эту скрытую мультидисциплинарность
when one side accommodates several conferences on different topics, which makes it a multidisciplinary conference as one. Selectivity, I left it as it was in English. What does it mean? If all the applications are approved, then it's a red flag. Whether the articles are reviewed or not is an important information. Do you as an author receive a review? Do you receive the decision fast enough for it to be suspicious? Etc. These are criteria both from for the international community and for Russia. Another red sign. Conferences very often require a fee for participation, which is not the case for normal journals. Legitimate conferences define the cost of participation depending on the status of a future participant. In green, you can see nature conferences, and you can see that early bird registration for students is cheaper. Standard registration is more expensive. It depends on whether you're a student or a postdoc or academia member or industry member, but you only pay for the access to the conference. And Diane Pecorari writes that you cannot pay for the possibility to present. But the predatory conferences in red, they follow the principle pay and present. The prices are similar. $249 can give you the way to present, to publish your article, but to present your work orally, you have to pay $849. This cannot be the case for any legitimate conference. Whether you present during the session or not depends on the review or on the committee of the reviewer. Well, if it depends on the price you pay, then it might be a predatory conference. I can see that I have very few time left, sorry.
Так скажем, формирование, так скажем, ложной репутации.
False reputation building. It is named differently in English, and there's a lot written in the original article, so I refer you to the original text. And I put here on the slide the most vivid points applicable to Russia. Linguistically, title of the conference can present several red flags. If there are words scientific or international, it might be a red flag.
Комитета по публикационной этике. Поэтому вот очень тоже хороший в России конференции
these names contain international or scientific, then it might be predatory. A lot of conferences,
например, ResearchGate, это социальная сеть, или Google Scholar, это поисковик, это
provide indexing
такой прием идут даже
Google or any other search engine that is not scientific index.
Пишут, что
Some of the
регулярно
journals
в базе индексирования в российской
state that they apply regularly for indexing in their databases. If they state that they have just applied that, it might mean that they did not receive any indication. So, other important signs might be contained in the descriptions of the previous conferences, previous editions. If you can see that very few time is allotted for the session, then it might be a red flag for you. Sorry for being late. Last example, Diana Pirogov mentioned shortly the journal. The scientist, I know the publishing committee, it is a legitimate journal. And recently I received an email spam. You can see on the logo on the right, and I understood that this might be a predatory journal. So I wrote to the actual editor of the True Scientist, and she confirmed that there might have been the theft of the brand.
Значит, такой вот вывод.
So, to sum up,
исследование Diana Pirogov
provides a nice case stating that systemic analysis allows us to make a list of criteria to detect predatory conferences. International recommendations are published based on the Diana Pirogov's work at Scopus, and yesterday I published at this link on the website of the Council for Ethics our own recommendations, and I will show them to you briefly. This is one of the pages, one of the last news. You can see that there's a text version, and you can download the flyer, you can print it out. It is presented easily, and you can use it as a manual for your younger, maybe less experienced colleagues. So I suggest you take a look at the publication and at our website. Sorry for this delay. Thank you for this opportunity.